bringing history to life. So we have a 5th grader who, this would be an example of what a sharing might be to her classmates. The sound system always keeps changing.
Research right about chocolate milk. I have something that I need to remember that I need to do in the future. I've circled, crossed out, underlined, bolded, asterisks to remind myself that I need to write that in my findings.
So Eliza pretty much shared out on her editing and revising of her original draft in her writer's notebook. Sometimes pieces are brought to publication, other times they are just pieces that they're working on in order to understand a task, a skill, or a strategy. That is one of the shifts with Calkins, is that in the past with process writing, we were always rushing to get a finished product from students. And that sometimes took away from the students really understanding the process and the pieces that were important along the way. So when kids are ready to publish, they will bring a work to full fruition, but if not, they're comfortable with starting a seed, working on a piece, and then revisiting that piece later in the year. And then the last one, she was too irresistible, and I apologize because this was done on my iPhone after the iPad didn't have any memory, but she wanted so much to share about her table of contents. So. She is so articulate and so, but the voice, the sound is... Again, I apologize.
You got nothing?
Yeah, Leslie. I tested it all out on my computer, but this one is the district computer. But she goes on to explain her table of contents, each chapter of her informational text, and then she also wanted to read sections of her text, so I couldn't say no. I said, yes, go ahead. But unfortunately, the technology is a challenge. All right, so special guests tonight. We have Donna Salone. Mrs. Salone, who's been, I think, at least 9 years in the K-5 writing committee, if not more. And also the Summer Institute's writing of that curriculum. One of the things with implementation last year is that we went dove in K-5. And the principals were a little concerned, we were all a little concerned, what would that mean for students who had not had the program prior? But the decision was made that we would implement the program as it was, but we made minor adjustments. The 5th grade teachers last year used the Bringing History to Life unit, which aligned with their social studies and ELA units at the time. But then we had a little dilemma this year. We couldn't do the same unit without changing unit 4 because those students would have had that unit. So we brought that unit back to 4th grade, Bringing History to Life, with a redesign this summer during the ELA Summer Institute. And Mrs. Salone is going to give you a little background on that. It ended up being just perfect. It was fun.
Hi, I teach 4th grade at Rockwell School. I think I have the best job in the world because I get to work with amazing people. Like I have over here Savannah Cruz, Jessica Deal, and Thea Jackson. And Savannah, did you want to say a little fun fact?
My mom was in Miss Salone's 4th grade class.
That's when I was at Colt Andrews.
I need your grandmother.
So last summer we started working on revising the 4th grade Bringing History to Life writing unit. We wanted the topic to be pertinent to the 4th grade curriculum, So we changed the focus to Roger Williams, an amazing Rhode Islander and American. The topic integrates nicely with the Sense of Pride program, as well as many of the new social studies standards. We worked with Lane Sparkman, who ran the Sense of Pride program, and she's a Bristolian. I'm sure you all know who Lane Sparkman is. She now works for the Secretary of State's office and is in charge of revamping civic education. She is a Roger Williams expert and a tour guide at the State House, which contains a museum displaying the Royal Charter and other artifacts of Roger Williams. The Royal Charter is a document written primarily by Roger Williams, which outlines his desire for the King to grant freedom of religion and self-governance for the Rhode Island colony. There's a lot I could say on this topic, but this is the foundation of the freedoms guaranteed by the First Amendment to our Constitution. We learn all about this in the writing, Bringing History to Life. In June, we go to the State House for a tour to see the Royal Charter and to participate in a mock legislative session. And Kenny Marshall has been doing that with us the past couple of years. So I had my doubts as to how engaged the children would be studying history. Will they get excited and be, wanting to write more and choose their own topics and really take it deep, as we say? I was pleasantly surprised at how passionate they became with their topics, which included Roger Williams, Thomas Jefferson, the founding of Bristol, King Philip's War, and the list goes on. The unit culminated in a wax museum, which is why we have these three ladies over here with their costumes on, and the girls will now tell you about their character and read a part of their research. Okay. So, all right, here you go.
I'm Steve Jackson. I chose Roger Williams as my topic. Right now, I am dressed as Mary Williams, Roger Williams' daughter. I chose Roger Williams as my topic because he gave us religious freedom. As a part of writing workshop, we learned about including mini-stories. My mini-story was about how Providence was named. In the mini-story, I put myself in the place of Mary Williams' daughter and imagined a conversation. Here is my report on Roger Williams. Roger's life in Providence. Roger and his family moved to the land of Narragansett in 1636. Later on, Williams and several of his followers established the city of Providence in 1636. Then, in 1643, American colonists organized the New England Confederation without including the Providence settlement. In 1644, Roger traveled to England, then secured a charter that united Providence, Portsmouth, and Newport into the colony of Rhode Island and Providence Plantation. Years later, Providence became a popular place for people in Massachusetts. Here's my mini-story. As I stood on the bluff with my father, I felt proud of him. Don't you think we should name this wonderful village I mentioned? I agree, he said. What shall we call it? I thought and thought and thought, and then I said, call it Providence because of God's providence to you in your distress. My father gave me a happy smile. Then he said, a great name, Providence it shall be, and may it continue to be the freest place on earth.
I'm Jessica Deal. I dressed up as Thomas Jefferson for my topic. I wanted to do Thomas Jefferson because 3 years ago I went to Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home, and decided I wanted to learn more about it. As part of the writing workshop, we learned about how to include the turning point in our stories. I wrote my turning point about how Thomas Jefferson and the other founding fathers gave us freedom forever. Now I will read you part of my story. Because of Thomas Jefferson and the other founding fathers, we are living in a free country. When the Declaration of Independence was made, we were declaring freedom from England, and we have been free ever since. And now we can govern ourselves in any way we want. When the founding fathers freed us from England, that encouraged many other people to fight for other freedoms too. Thomas Jefferson once said, a true patriot will defend his country from its government. This means that if someone is a true patriot, they will protect their country from the country's government if the government is doing the wrong thing. Thomas Jefferson lives on.
Thomas Jefferson may have died, but his memory still lives on inside of all of us. He is remembered in monuments like the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C. Thomas Jefferson is also on the $2 bill and on the nickel. We also follow the same rules that Thomas Jefferson wrote a little less than 300 years ago. We will never forget how important he was in forming our country. My name is Savannah Cruz, and I decided to dress up as Hope Wally, one of the founders of Bristol, John Wally's daughter. I chose the founding of Bristol to learn about an amazing town called Bristol's history. As a part of Writer's Workshop, we learned that when you are writing about history, you have to write and explain how the history all started, and that is called the big idea. Now I will read some of my writing. 4 men with a big idea. You are probably wondering who were the 4 men with such a big idea. Well, those people were Nathaniel Barfield, Stephen Burton, Nathaniel Oliver, and John Wally. The 4 men were English from Boston and nearby towns. The 4 businessmen purchased land from Boston, and the man gave Boston 1,000 English pounds in 1680. After the men purchased the land from Boston, they were able to sell land to the other families. Before the 4 men could relax, they had to think of a name for the new town. So they had a town meeting at the Bristol Town Common. After talking for a while, they called this new town Bristol. The Bristolians called it Bristol because the Bristol, England had a very important seaport, and they wanted Bristol, Rhode Island to have an important seaport too. Once the town had a name, people, and a harbor, they could relax. But they had to do something about the Indians. An early settler of Bristol named Benjamin Church decided he had no choice but to kill the leader of the Native Americans tribe, King Philip. After he passed away, the tribe slowly fell apart, and soon there would be no sign of the Native Americans. Once there was no sign of the Native Americans, the Bristolians would take their land. The new town. In my 3rd chapter, I will tell you about the new town. This chapter will tell and describe a day in the life of Bristol, Rhode Island, the 1600s. In September 1681, there was a town meeting to come up with a name for the amazing town called Bristol. About 81 citizens of Bristol went to the first town meeting just to come up with a name. The meeting was probably very important. Citizens of Bristol were called Bristolians in 1680 and are still called Bristolians now in 2018. In addition, Bristol had elections in 1681 to find a new town leader. The new town had many jobs, and one of the jobs was the town clerk. The town clerk was responsible for the town's important information. For instance, the town clerk kept the birth dates, death dates, and marriage dates. Something the Bristolians had to do was give streets their names in Bristol. In 1681, there were no streets in Bristol. They definitely had to do something about it. Here are some of the original street names in Bristol, Rhode Island. Broad Street, Charles Street, King Street, Queen Street. Later they were named Bradford Street, State Street, Church Street, and Constitution Street.
I want to compliment you on those wonderful essays, really. And I was going to say, even though we have a question and answer at the end, if anyone has any questions for Mrs. Salone or the 3 students here in terms of Writer's Workshop, please, you could ask them now, if you prompt to. No, everyone's fine? And it is very impressive to realize that these are only 4th graders.
This is our future here. They're amazing.
So we also wanted to spotlight that this year and last year, as part of the digital literacy teams, that technology is alive and well and has been used, both Flipgrid and Seesaw, from Twitter feeds to all kinds of information. So I was having a conversation with Mrs. Castigliego, who is a Flipgrid ambassador, and I guess the bus from Flipgrid visited today. So she expressed that she had one student in her class who really at the beginning of third grade was a very reluctant writer. And this student has grown, not just because of the Hawkins and the writing, but also because of the opportunity to do the videos with Flipgrid. So we actually had a testimonial, his videotape from the beginning of the year in September, and then his opinion writing piece that was just done now in early May. Because he was so busy last, I guess, preparing for the Flipgrid, I did not get his, he said he will send it to me, and Mrs. Castigliego was very busy today with the assemblies and preparing for the visit. But what I did provide is we're going to watch him read his small moments from the narratives, and then there is a piece which...
One day I went to a store named Savers. I saw a big bag of Army Men that was real cheap. I asked my dad if I could have that bag of Army Men. He said yes. And I went to get in line, and I waited patiently. When I got to the front of the line, I gave the woman the money, and then I got the Army Men. Then I went to my car. When we got home, I played with my Army Men, and I played with my old Army Men. I mixed it up too. So after I played with my Beanie Boos, then I played with both of them. Bye!
So what Desmond expressed to me was that this was his pre-writing activity. He actually did it orally first before even planning or writing his small moment, which is part of the narrative. We included his now May writing of his opinion writing on, and he chose, for the opinion writing, he chose to write about why he thinks Flipgrid should be used in the elementary school. It helps the students' grades going up. So this piece, when you have time to read, he's very passionate about it, and he did come to visit me this afternoon. He said, I will do it. I said, okay, when you do it, I'm posting it so that people can see it. But he also expressed to me that, you know, when I look at other people's Flipgrid videos, it helps me get ideas. So it's another way of their communicating and also archiving the writing that they've done, the growth over time. So there are quite a few teachers using both Flipgrid and Seesaw. This piece, I think it's repetitive in the sense that we went with Hawkins' writing because it also had formative and summative assessments that teachers use. There is a on-demand writing that happens before the start of a unit, and it's really to see what the student already knows, what is the baseline. And then at the end of each unit, they write a piece as well. So teachers can compare, see growth over time. And along with that came the learning progressions and the rubrics to support that. In your folder, you do have some samples. And calibrating is really hard work. The teachers have been training to look at their rubric. I gave you some samples of the rubric. It can get a little messy and complicated. So in the calibration process, teachers score the student work first on their own, and then they score it again with other teachers so that they can have those conversations in terms of each of the components. So I'm looking at You have a first grade rubric for informational writing. We did a fourth for narrative, and they're different grade levels. It would have been too much to provide you with all those pieces. Even though it is a 4-point rubric, the nice piece about the rubrics is that there are points that can be earned at midpoint. So 1.5 instead of a 2, because a student is at mid-level. They're not quite there. There's still pieces that need to be worked on. The 3 areas of the rubric are always the structure, the development, and language and conventions. And sometimes teachers are only scoring for the structure of that piece. Other times they're looking at the development. Kindergarten, for example, doesn't really look at elaboration or craft until much later in the year. So that was just to give you an idea of the kinds of tools the teachers have and some samples of student work. There is a piece in there that is a 5th grade argument piece. So just so you know what the samples are, the first one is April, kindergartner, pretty much doing their informational piece. So this one's a short one, I can read it. Let me tell you about chipmunks. So there's the introduction, the lead. Chipmunks have stripes and they have bushy tails. Chipmunks live in forests. Also in tunnels, also in trees and logs. Chipmunks eat seeds and nuts. They hold nuts in their cheeks. I hope you learned about chipmunks. I did have a video of this young man, Kipper. He's from UCO, but unfortunately that video didn't go well either. So I need some training in first, and the equipment as well. For some reason, I didn't have enough memory. We gave you a first grade sample of informational so you could compare K to 1, and I'll let you read those and look at those on your own. But the table of contents, the other child that Colt Andrews talked about. So they have a table of contents, they organize their chapters. And we also threw in an opinion piece for first grade because we had an opinion piece for 5th grade. And this piece came up during the calibrating sessions, and this was really an exemplary piece. So we gave you this one. I think that you'll be as impressed as I was that a 5th grader, and this was all done in the classroom. The amount of research involved, the amount from first draft to this piece has been very impressive. So, year 3, these are just a few pieces. We would like to differentiate more for teachers based on their needs in the area of Writer's Workshop. We would like to focus on conferring and really providing feedback to students. How do we move students writing to the next level? And then part of that, bullet 2, is learning to use strong and weak work. We can use some of the Calkins exemplars. We can use our own student work. So collecting that body, archiving student writing samples is critical to the work of calibration and giving feedback.